Hey y'all, and welcome back. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to check out another one of my videos, and welcome to the final KatesGiving video. I can't believe I am filming it. By the time I post this, I can't believe it's over. We're still like towards the beginning of the month when I'm filming this, but still, I have finished all my pre-recording, and the time that this video goes live, this is KatesGiving's final video. So I hope you guys have been enjoying the whole month long of daily uploads during KatesGiving, and the big focus of KatesGiving is going back and revisiting the palettes that we all know and love that have come out in previous years. And one of the big focuses of the month is I've been going back to my 2019 favorites, and I have this subscriber to thank. She left this comment a very long time ago. I remember screenshotting it, writing the idea down, and trying to think about how to do it. But when she commented it, I didn't know how to revisit the palettes while trying so many new palettes until I thought of doing KatesGiving and letting it the focus of the month be on revisiting older palettes and kind of, you know, enjoying what you have, that type of thing for KatesGiving in November and all that. And when I thought of that, I was like, that would be the perfect time to take her idea and kind of bring it to life, you know, with my own spin, maybe not exactly as she said, but it was the start of this series. So thank you so very much to the person who left this comment. I really do appreciate you taking the time, and I'm blanking on your name on the top of my head as I sit down to write, but I did screenshot it. It is here, and I do appreciate you leaving me that comment because it has resulted in KatesGiving of 2022 and it just being a really fun month of getting to go back and visit a lot of palettes from 2018 and 2019 and just having fun with them once again. So yeah, if that sounds interesting to you, we're gonna dive into it. I have my top 10 palettes from 2019. I'll leave the videos of all of them that I revisited during the course of this month and did another eye look with. I'll leave them linked down below in the description box if you want to check them out if you missed any of them and you want to see the eye look that I did. But I went back into all these palettes and tried them again. A couple of them I combined together in a palette bingo. But anyway, with all that said, let's go ahead and just get right into the countdown and share with you guys how I would rank them today. How I would rank my 2019 palettes that I ranked my top 10 from 2019. How I would rank them after trying them another time in 2022. You guys know how I like to do it. I always start with the worst, and actually, or not the worst, but I'm going to start at the bottom, number 10. Now this is number 10 because I have 10 palettes. I have to rank them top 10, but actually this is a palette I would not mention as a top favorite at all now in my collection. And honestly, it's a palette that has been, you know, kind of put back to the side as a nostalgic type of palette that brings a lot of memories back, but isn't especially a favorite of mine that I want to reach back for and use. And that's going to be the Midas Cosmetics Dulce Vida palette. Now it is no longer available. Midas Cosmetics did shut down and rebrand into Midas spelt with a Y instead of an I. I know you guys have heard a lot on my channel as I've been revisiting these palettes, but anyway, this palette right here, looking at it now, having played with it a little bit more, which I will leave all the videos linked down below where I use these palettes again on my channel. I'll leave them linked down below if you missed any or if you want to go rewatch anything. But after playing with it again, really looking at the color story, knowing how I like it now, this isn't a color story that necessarily excites me. I can definitely get a lot of fun looks with it. I can definitely have fun with this palette for sure. It's a fun color story, but as far as like top favorite, it definitely doesn't rank that high. It's just a really good palette. It's got a nice formula. I was very happy with, I think I used 2 of the mattes. It's got a really nice formula. I didn't have a problem with the blending and whatnot and how they show up on the eyes. Overall, very, very pretty, but just the color story as a whole, when I was looking at it, I was like, I don't know. It just didn't make me fall in love with it the way I remembered enjoying it originally. And also too, like I said, I've come a long way. I've tried so many more palettes, and there's so many palettes with this colorful color story that has depth in it too, and I think that's really what's lacking in this palette for it to really excite me, is there's some deeper tones, but nothing deep. And I like a palette with really bright colors kind of like this, but I want the depth there for the outer corner. So I think that's why this palette just kind of misses the mark now. Quality wise, I still was really happy with it as I remember being happy with it before, but as far as calling it a top 10, not really anymore. So that's why it's getting the very bottom at the 10 spot in this countdown. But definitely if I had to re-rank all my palettes from 2019, I don't think this one would make it to the top 10 anymore. Okay, another palette that I still really do enjoy and look back fondly on is the Lemonade palette from, again, Midas Cosmetics. And this palette is just such a fun yellow monochromatic palette. And I think that's why it still has a special place in my heart, because I don't have very many yellow monochromatic palettes that I really like. I haven't found a yellow monochromatic palette that I'm like, yes, all that in one palette, that's all I need to get my type of yellow monochromatic eyeshadow look. This one is the closest it comes to, but it still doesn't have a really deep brown to give me the depth that I like with my yellows. I wish this one was a couple shades darker, and then this would be all in one. Yes, all I want in a yellow monochromatic palette. I've tried the one from Glam Shop and I think from ColourPop, and both of them just don't give me the depth. They are very pretty yellows, but they don't give me the depth. And this one, something I love about it is just because of how intense some of these shades are and how beautiful they are. I really enjoyed revisiting these. I used 2 of my favorites from them, this intense bright yellow and then this a beautiful kind of duochrome type of shimmer. Both were beautiful again, so still is a fantastic palette. I kind of keep it back here because I enjoy it so much, and getting to revisit with it, I was really happy to dive back into it. So I can definitely say that looking back at 2019, thinking about, you know, all the palettes that I tried, this will definitely still be in top 10. And then for this video, I'm ranking it right here at number 9 because while I do really like the yellow monochromatic palette, like I said, it just that if that brown was a couple shades darker to give me a nice deep rich brown, it would have gotten a lot higher. And as it is, it's still a really nice palette, and I did get several looks out of this palette that I really did like. Next up is going to be Kaleidos Sci Fi Green. The only reason this palette is getting a wee bit low in my countdown, obviously, is because with this palette, while I love the formula, I love this really dark black. It is the most beautiful black, one of the most beautiful blacks I have in my collection for sure. But I am just a little disappointed with how close these two greens are, and then how close these two shimmers are. There is difference in there, but they're not so different that when I use a different shade, you know, change up the shades when I'm creating looks, I feel like all the looks kind of end up looking very similar just because they're so similar with what I have to work with. So for it to be a 5-pan palette, to have different tones, I just wish there was a little bit more of a variance between the shades, maybe a super light green or really bright type of grungy green and then a darker grungy green, and then a little bit more difference between the yellow grunge and the more green yellow grunge. That's my only kind of critique with this palette. But getting to revisit it this past month, I was still really happy with the formula. The black is just amazing. Such a good black. Still like it. The shimmers are very nice. So overall, I still do like it, but thinking back and, you know, thinking about my collection now, there's a lot more green type of palettes that are small, concise like this that I love a lot more than this one. So it doesn't rank as high in my mind as it used to, and for like a small 5-6 pan green, grungy green eyeshadow palette, this definitely wouldn't be my number 1 at all. So that's why I figured to put it right here. Okay, next up in my countdown, I have to put the Lethal Cosmetics Hive collection, and I have it in a Menagerie magnetic palette because I couldn't find my lethal one, but this is what it looks like, and revisiting this, I just had a really great time with it. It doesn't blow me away with the shimmers. The shimmers are pretty, they're nice, but they're not like the sparkliness that I feel like a lot of palettes are today. But as a whole with this color story, this is a very pretty kind of everyday type of color story for me. I really do enjoy it. I like that you can get very simple looks, but you can also kind of jump around in this palette and get a little bit more pop to your color as well into your eye looks, which I love. You guys know I like to get really simple looks, but then also be able to have a lot of creativity, so that works on the days I have no time to do my makeup, and also works on the days when I have a lot of time and I want to have fun with my makeup. And this is a palette that can totally give that to me. I like the pop of green and the pop of that orange up there. You got the blue and the purple shimmers to, you know, play around with on your eyes, and overall quality wise is just as good as I remember. Definitely amazing. If I was just ranking it on the quality, I would definitely say it gets very high in my countdown, but think about the quality, about the other palettes that I'm going to be ranking it ahead of it, and about the color story, I decided to put it right here. It's definitely not the bottom of this countdown. It's a fantastic palette. It's, you know, still so good when I went back to it. All of the reasons I put it as my top 10 for 2019, I totally understand why I did that, because using it again just reminded me of how good Lethal Cosmetics single eyeshadows are. They're amazing, and this color story is just so nice. I really did enjoy it, so definitely gets pretty high in my countdown, but I can't put it as high because we're talking about some really good palettes from here on out. So placing it right here at number 7 as just a fantastic palette, and I'm so glad I got to go back and play around with it some more. Alright, next up is the Killer Purr palette. This was such a great palette to go back to. I did use multi-chromes with it instead of these shimmers because I already know I don't like these shimmers, and this one is such a mess. I probably should just throw it away because it just chunked off on my skirt, making a mess everywhere. But anyway, let's talk about the mattes. This palette is just as good as I remember, so this was definitely getting pretty high in my countdown. Menagerie Cosmetics is reformulating or redesigning this palette, and it's going to be launching on Black Friday, which is already passed at the point of this video going up, and I do plan to pick it up, and the feedback that I've gotten so far is everyone wanting to see a video, so I definitely am excited to try out the new design. Her shimmers, Menagerie shimmers, have been getting so good in recent months that I can't wait to see what she puts in there, and I'm sure they're going to be better than the 2 shimmers that were in here. And I'm curious to see if she's going to change the matte formula, because the last palette that I tried, the mattes were a little bit different, so I'm a little nervous, a little scared, but a little excited as well. But just talking about this palette, it's just as good as I remember. A fantastic color story, fantastic for like the neutral everyday, but even though like this palette kind of screams kind of neutral, I focused on the more colorful sides of this palette when I tried it again this past month, and I got a really colorful makeup look that I absolutely love. So I love that versatility with having that easy everyday, but also if you want to have fun with your makeup and kind of get a little experimental, you can really go that route with this palette, even though it isn't like super crazy colorful and bright. It's got the color in there so that you can do that if you want. So overall, just a fantastic palette. I had so much fun going back to it and remembering all the reasons I loved it so much, and definitely still be in my top 10 from 2019. I'm so glad I put it top 10. I'm so glad I got to try it that year, and it's still just as good in the year 2022. Alright, next I'm going to put Give Me Glow Cosmetics Juicy Olive palette. This was my very first palette from Give Me Glow, and it is what set my love for Give Me Glow in motion, I guess you could say, because I just fell in love with the quality of the mattes and the shimmers in here, and being able to revisit this palette, I totally get why. Like, I had so much fun creating my look with this, and I think I was able to use every single eyeshadow on my eyes that day. I'm pretty sure I did, but it was just such a fun grungy green look, but it wasn't too dark and grunge. I've noticed that I like grungy green, I like grungy tones, but there still has to be something light and bright about the look, or it's a little just too dark and muddy for my preferences, and this palette gives me that balance. I can go really dark and grungy, but I still have the lighter tones with the shimmers to really make the eyes pop, the center of the eyes pop, and make it to be an eyeshadow palette that I really enjoy and like to wear. So I really like that aspect of it, and getting to revisit it, you know, it just confirmed my opinions on this palette as just being a fantastic grungy green eyeshadow palette, still holding strong in the year 2022, even though it's been a few years old. It's a great palette, great formula. Give Me Glow is one of my favorite brands. You guys know this for both their mattes and their shimmers. All around, just love them. And once again, I really did enjoy this palette. So glad I got to go back to it. And yeah, I definitely had to get pretty high in this countdown because it's just a phenomenal palette. Great one to have. Definitely one of my top favorite grungy green palettes. Next up, I had to put the Colored Raine Safari Raine palette high. This is my type of more neutral everyday eyeshadow look because it's nothing super bright and colorful and like in your face. When it comes to the eyeshadow, like it's not a rainbow palette, it's not like a tropical paradise type of, like, you know, birds of paradise, whatever that really colorful toucan. Whatever the really colorful birds are, it's nothing that in your face bright, but these tones, the quality of these shadows as well, it just ends up being such a beautiful look, and the tones are my type of tones when it comes to colors on my eyes that I enjoy to wear. These are my type of neutrals, so with this palette, I love it every time I dive into it, and trying it now a couple years later, the quality is still absolutely there, and it's still holding strong. The Colored Raine shimmers are so good. They're so nice, so intense, and the mattes, as I remember them, are phenomenal. So smooth, so intensely pigmented, so easy to work with, and so easy to blend into each other. Absolutely beautiful. And even though there's more shimmers in here than mattes, I still really enjoy this palette, and I feel like every time that I've dipped into this palette to create a look, I haven't felt like stuck or like I keep repeating the same look. I'm able to kind of mix and match the shimmers and the mattes together to get really fun, creative, and different looks. So definitely had to be high, definitely had to be, what is this, top 5 in my countdown, just because it's such a good palette, and getting to go back and use it again, I'm in love once again. It is so good, it's so nice, and it's just one of my favorites. That's why it always stays back here, because my top favorites have to stay nice and close, because I always just like to think back on all the looks that I did with them and remember how much fun they were to create. I think we're on number 3. Top 5 from here on out was so hard to rank. I tell you, so hard to rank. I wanted to put them all at number 1. That's how much I love them, but I couldn't, so I did have to rank them. Next up is going to be the Whalesong palette from Menagerie Cosmetics, and it's what's on my eyes today, actually, and it's just such a phenomenal palette. Diving back into this, getting to try it once again, I love it all over again. Again, it's one of those type of eyeshadow palettes that you look at it and you're like, oh, that's so grungy and so dark. You know, will I like that type of thing? But when I was creating looks with it, it's like, yes, I like it, because it has those lighter tones in there to really let the eyeshadow pop and to, you know, get me to the type of eye looks that I like to wear and I like to sport. It's nothing too dark, and you just have that beautiful mix of light and dark that you guys know I love. I like deep richness on my outer corner, but I also like the bright in a palette, and this is all encompassing when it comes to this palette, so I absolutely love it. And also I was happy to see, going back to this palette, I enjoy overall all of the shimmers. Before getting to play with this again, I remember really loving these 2 shades, but thinking these 2 were just okay. I thought this one was chunky and, you know, just difficult to use, and this one was hard to pick up with a brush. But using it again today, I've realized that, you know, this one is not, it is a little chunky, but it's just more so the color's not really that vibrant, so it's just not my preference. And this is surprisingly, like, it's not the easiest to pick up with a brush, but it's not as hard as I remember, so I honestly don't mind it, and I really do like the colors. So as a whole, I've come to enjoy this palette a little bit more than what has stayed in my memory all these years, and going forward, I can, you know, look back and go like, no, actually, as a whole, Katie, you kind of really like the whole palette. You know, sure, maybe there was a little bit of, you know, chunkiness with that, or just a little bit more work to put this on, but it really wasn't that bad, and nothing to really knock the palette on. So as a whole, I really did enjoy it, and with this palette especially, you do have to be careful with how intensely pigmented it is. I feel like just touching the outer corners of it, I'm getting really dirty already, and it does stain my fingertips, so that's really the only con for me, something that I have to keep in mind. But again, it's not like a con that I don't like about the palette, it's just something that I keep in mind and I like to mention in my videos. But overall, such a great palette. Had to keep it very high in my countdown, and I put it at top 3, even though that hurts because I'm like, it's a great palette. But the other 2 that we're going to talk about are just, they're really great too, and I had to put them a little bit higher. Okay, for number 2, we're going to put the Paulina palette from Blush Tribe. Blush Tribe is no longer around anymore. They did have to close down, but this palette is such a good palette. Totally worth picking up if you can find it somewhere on Mercari or Poshmark or something like that, because this color story is so fun and unique and different, and the way she put the colors together creates a very like endless possibilities when it comes to the look because of the way she matched the shimmers with the mattes. I love the balance that she put in this palette. I like how you have the greens, the different shades to really be able to do like an all green look, and then the different shades of pink and purple to do an honestly all pink look or an all purple look, or you can, as I like to do, mix and match them different ways. And like I said, the possibilities just feel endless whenever I go into this palette. I feel like I never repeat a look, and I love that in a palette, so I had to rank it really high for that. And then also too, just the quality of this is really nice. They're more of a dry type of matte, but they still are so pigmented. I don't really care how eyeshadow feels as long as it's pigmented on my eyes and easy to use. That works for me, and these are all beautiful to work with on my eyes. And then the shimmers are really pretty too. They have a very subtle type of sparkle to them, but they're very smooth, they're very pigmented, they're very easy to go on, and the look that I did this past month just confirmed all the reasons why I remember enjoying this palette. So I had to give it a really high spot. I thought about putting it a little bit lower before trying this because I was like, you know what? I like to go a bit deeper with my outer corner than this palette gives me, and I enjoy going deeper now than I think I did back in 2019. However, when I created a look with this, I mixed this purple with this green and got such a deep, dark outer corner. I was very happy, so I was like, you know what, you can just combine those, you get all the depth you want. Overall, I'm happy, and I had to place this palette at number 2 just because it's such a phenomenal palette. I enjoyed Paulina when she was on YouTube so very much. She's still over on Instagram if you are curious to catch up with her and see what's going on with her, but hopefully she'll come back one day, and whenever she does, I'll be super happy to catch up with her. But she did a phenomenal job on this palette, and is still such a good palette. All right, I had to do it. My number 1 palette, the Juvia's Place Tribe palette. This palette is just, it's a palette that I just can't ever stop loving, basically. Like, I feel like anytime I talk about Juvia's Place, anytime I talk about like a green palette and talking about 2019 palettes, this is always coming up as one of my favorites, so I had to give it the number 1 spot because I remember enjoying it so much. The color story is just such a favorite of mine, and then after trying it this past month, the quality is still absolutely there. It's such a good palette, such good quality that I had to give it number 1. I love the mix of mattes and shimmers, the different colors that you can get. And this is another palette that I feel like is very versatile with the type of looks you can get. You can either kind of stick to the greens and get a green look, you can stick to the more orangey browns and get a neutral look, you can just stick to the browns and the beige and get a very neutral look, you can mix and match them up. The possibilities, again, a little bit more neutral and not as loud as the Paulina, but in the same way, feel endless to me when I go into this palette, and that's what I love with a palette, a color story that I get excited for, and then a color story variety that makes me feel like every time I go into the palette, I'm never repeating a look that I've done. And that's the case with this palette. I've used this palette so many times in the past, and I feel like I've never repeated a look. They all look so fun, unique, and different. The shimmers in here are smooth. They have a subtle little sparkle to them. They're easy to put on. They're lovely, and then the mattes are so easy to blend out and nicely pigmented, and just all around, it's a great palette, and I totally get why I named it top 10 of 2019, and honestly, even back then, I think I was wanting to put this at number 1 just because I loved it so much, but back then, I just didn't want to name a favorite and offend any of my other top 10s, I guess. But in 2022, Katie has grown. I don't mind ranking things as much. It's still hard to rank things, but it doesn't hurt me as much as it used to back then. I'm doing it here. I'm going to name this as my number 1 palette that I tried in the year 2019, and trying it again in 2022. Still love it. Still a good palette. I can understand all the reasons why it was a top favorite from 2019. It's still one of my top favorite palettes in my eyeshadow collection today. So, such a fantastic palette. The Tribe palette has such a special place in my heart. You guys know, you hear me say it all the time. It's fantastic. I love it so much. Had to give it number 1. Alright, there you have it. Those are my top 10 palettes from 2019, ranked from worst to best after revisiting them in 2022 so many years later. So let me know what you think down below in the comments. I can't wait to hear what you guys think of KatesGiving, of this 2019 re-ranking. I was really excited to get to do it. Thank you so much to the subscriber who gave me this idea to do the ranking. I really do appreciate when you guys give me video ideas. I absolutely love it. And whenever, I always feel bad if I can't get to it, but this one was such a neat idea. I definitely wanted to take the time to go back and do it, and doing it during KatesGiving I felt like was the best way to do it because it gave me the time to go back and revisit and get an opinion on these palettes before I tried re-ranking them. So hopefully, like I said, I can, kind of expand upon her idea and do more of it, and maybe next year during KatesGiving 2023, if I want to repeat this, I can do my top 10 2020 and re-rank those. So let me know your thoughts down below if that sounds good to you. Can't even imagine like doing a 2023, but if this series goes on well, you guys all enjoy it, I'm able to do it next year, I think it'd be a lot of fun to revisit my top 10 2020 palettes that I ranked, and I did rank those back then, so that'll be even more fun to see if I really do change the order of things after going back. So anyway, let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. I hope you guys enjoyed KatesGiving. Can't believe this is the final day, the final upload for KatesGiving, but I had a lot of fun doing it, and I hope you had a lot of fun watching it. And with all that said, don't forget I'm over on Instagram, LadyKatie92 over there, and I will see you guys very soon in my next video. Not tomorrow, but in a couple days I'll probably have a new video. So see you guys then. Bye guys.